Setting up cleats on your new Clipless shoes can seem like a bit of a daunting process, especially with a lot of talk about possible injuries if you get it wrong, which is true, but if you follow these steps in this video, you will be well on your way to that perfect fit. First up, if you're new to the channel, do hit that subscribe button, or if you're not new and you want to see more helpful tips like this, then do hit that like, because it really helps us continue to make free content like this in the future. But for now, let me explain how a cleat works. So in your new cleat pack, you should have the main body of the cleat, something like this, and you will have a slider as well, which allows the cleat to move and be adjusted. And then you will have two bolts that go in either hole, and you may even have different sized bolts to accommodate different brands of shoes. And if you have anything like this, then that is a spacer that goes underneath your cleat in order to allow it to sit proud if you've got really deep tread on your shoes. Now, all cleats will be cross-compatible with all shoe brands. So for example, I've got Crank Brothers cleats here that are fitting onto Shimano shoes, but your cleats must be compatible with your pedals. So my Crank Brothers cleats here are because I'm using Crank Brothers pedals. Now, often different brands will work in different ways, so that's why they must be compatible with the pedals, and it doesn't matter too much about the shoes. So once you have your shoes and your cleats, you will need an Allen key to fit the bolts. So mine is a 4mm. Ideally, you want a torque wrench in the relevant size to torque up your bolts, but you can get away with just a normal Allen key. And you want a ruler or something to draw a straight line with. And ideally, you want some bicycle assembly grease. Any kind of normal grease will be fine. You will also need a pen to mark up the position, but if you're precious about your shoes and you don't want to be drawing on them, then some masking tape will help. And for reference, if you see a plate that's already in your shoes, then this needs to be removed. So you might need a Phillips head screwdriver here, like I do, in order to remove that. In order to know where your cleats are supposed to go, now ideally they should go in line with your metatarsal. So that is the bony point in your foot. And what you want to do is find the bony point of either side of your foot and make a mark on either side of your shoe where that bony bit is. And then what we can do is sit down and draw a line between those 2 points on the shoe. And that central position is where our cleats are going to go. So we've got our line here, and as you can see, mine is quite far forward in the cleat hole here. So I need to get this plate, which is underneath the sole, to move forward. Now, there are 4 holes usually to choose from, and this just means that you can choose one that's further back or further forward. You might need to get a pick or a tool or something to move that cleat forward into the position. There we have it. And then that's ready to put our cleats and our bolts in. Now, some cleats are directional, or they need to be on a specific foot. So this has L and this one has R, so that's left and right. Now, the best thing to do is to turn your shoe back up the right way round, just to double check that you've got the right one. So this is my right foot, so turn it back up, and then I'm going to put the right, or the one with the R written on it. So you put your cleat in first, and then you'll need this little sliding ring here, and then we put the bolts in here. Now, don't worry that everything isn't perfect just yet, because we will be able to move this around a bit later. But first things first, get a little bit of grease on those bolts before they go in, and this will just stop them seizing up when you start walking around in mud and water and whatnot. So just before I bolt these onto my shoe, I just want to explain that Crank Brothers, you can fit these that direction or turn them 180 in the other direction and they will always work. However, some other brands are directional. So for example, Shimano, they have the pointier rounded bit towards the top or towards the feet, and the flat base of the triangle goes towards the heel. But do check your manual on the brand that you're using to make sure. And so with our greased up bolt, I like to put it in the slider, and then that means I can see the screw hole underneath the cleat. because it can be fiddly sometimes, well, as you can see. And just get a little bit of the thread in there, because we don't want to tighten it up all the way. Just half the way is fine for now. Another bolt in the slider hole, lift up that cleat so we can see underneath it, find the thread and screw that in, nice and loose. Now this is the point where our little line comes in handy, because we've got it loose, we can move it around, and thanks to the plate which moves underneath in the sole of the shoe, and thanks to this little slider here, that means we can get different angles and different fore and afters and different positions so that we can get the center point of that cleat to meet our line. So what I'm going to do here is just eye up the center of either side of the cleat, so that I think it's central to that line. That looks about good. And what I'm going to do is just use my Allen key to nip that up, just tight enough so it doesn't move. And the other bolt there. And then you need to be really careful that when you start to tighten this up, that it's not moving the cleat. So just double check that it hasn't moved while you were tightening up the bolt. Go in again. And then if you've got a torque wrench, this is the point where we want to set it to the manufacturer's recommendations and then go in for the torque. And that's your cleat done. So simple. And all you have to do is repeat that process with your other shoe and then go and try them out. Now this is an important part because there's going to be more fiddling afterwards than there is just fitting the cleats. So for example, I'm looking at these and I'm thinking that the tread is quite deep on these shoes, and I'm half expecting that they won't go in very easily. Sometimes if the tread's too deep, it might get in the way of the cleat meeting with the mechanism in the pedal. So in this instance, if you find that you can't get your shoes into the pedal, then you might need one of these spacers. So unfortunately, that means taking the cleat out again and putting the spacer underneath so that the cleat can sit proud and be more likely to meet that clasp on your pedal. And before you're done, what I like to do is bed them in a little bit, because fresh cleats, and definitely fresh pedals as well, can feel really sharp and hard to get in and out of. So I like to get on my bike and clip in and clip out maybe 10 or 20 times just to round off those sharp edges a bit and make it easier to get in and out of. Now there are other branded pedals which use a spring tension to lock the pedals to the cleats. So for example, Shimano will have a dim setting, and you'll need a really small Allen key in order to loosen up the tension on the pedals and make them easier to get into. So you might want to loosen them up if it's your first time or if you've just put some new cleats in there. Other than that, I'm going to give you one bonus tip before we go, and that is if you start riding and you start to get a little knee pain, it might be that the angle of the cleat isn't great. So you can obviously turn the angle of these cleats to make your feet more heel in or more toe in. So what you want to do is sit on a tall bench or a tall chair or a table and let your feet dangle down. And if you look down, you should be able to see whether your feet naturally fall toe in or heel in. And if that's the case, you might want to change the angle a little bit later to see if that relieves some of the knee pressure. Anyway, hopefully that's gone a long way to getting you started on your first set of clipless pedals. Let me know how it goes down in the comments below and give me a like if this has helped you.